UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. When you look at the fuel in this country, many questions have been raised, especially the weekend that has just passed. A lot of shortages, especially when you look at the countryside on the eastern part, but also in West Nile. When you talk about districts all the way from Soroti to Busia, prices of fuel seem to be skyrocketing between 6,000 and 9,000 shillings. There are even shortages coming down all the way to Kampala. Fuel is a bloodline for the economy in this country. Talk about borders, talk about vehicles, but also in transporting goods, services, and people. And also the transporters have gone ahead to say the price of transport will go up between 5,000 and 10,000 shillings. What does that mean for you as an ordinary Ugandan? Government made promises that fuel will be here regardless of what is happening in the Middle East. Can they fulfill that promise? Because Ugandans do not care what fuel is coming from where. All they care about is the price at the pump, and is it reachable for them to make sure they move or do the businesses that they need to move. Today, we put government to the sword and also UNOC here to answer questions on fuel. Is there a shortage or is it a crisis? Have we managed this crisis better? What is the business continuity plan of government? Let's get into this discussion with my panel that is here with me. On my immediate left, making his maiden appearance here, Musa Rashid Otika, who is the general manager, the acting general manager at the National Pipeline Company, a subsidiary of UNOC there. Good evening, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah. Dr. John Kakungulu Walugembe, the ED of the Federation for Small and Medium Enterprises, is with us this evening. Dr. John, it's good to have you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers, and it's always a pleasure to be here with you.
So have you felt the temperature yet of the fuel?
Not that. I think UNOC is doing a good job. So.
Okay. Seems like you're on the same page there. The parent ministry to UNOC is here. The Ministry of Energy is here, and it is represented by Dr. Patricia Litho, who is the Assistant Commissioner in charge of communication at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. She's with us this evening. Dr. Patricia, it's good to have you.
Thanks for having us. Good evening, viewers.
Next to the doctor is Stephen Kaboyo, who is the MD at Alpha Capital Limited, but also a chairman advisory board of Uganda Total Energies. Good evening, sir. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good evening, viewers.
Lastly but not least, our Minister of State in charge of National Guidance and ICT, the Honorable Godfrey Kabyanga. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be here, and I've come with my technical officers to give you all the information you want.
So you are excluding yourself from the information?
Me, I'm giving them backup, so that you don't disturb them. They must be assured
I'm only asking
that government is here.
You can join us. The show is on YouTube there. Join us on the link and be able to have this conversation there. Drop your comment. We'll get to it at the top of the hour. But also on text and WhatsApp, 0709 60 25 92, and we'll be getting to those texts or WhatsApps at the top of the hour. We're also streaming live on Spaces on X. Drop your comment there. Let's get into this conversation. Statistics have shown that this country has about 2.3 or 2.8 million vehicles, but also we consume about 6.5 upwards of fuel, 6.5 million liters of fuel per day. A lot of promises were made by government, especially when the war in the Middle East happened. But also during the 11th Oil and Gas Convention, the Minister of Cabinet in charge of it, Dr. Ruth Nankabirwa, made proclamations about this, and I want to be able to interrogate some of those. Let me start with the Honorable Minister. We were here when this war started, you and I, and you gave us some assurances, especially your colleague, the Honorable Dr. Ruth Nankabirwa, where you said government is in charge. What is happening, especially looking at what happened in Busia, Soroti, all the way to the border, because the Kenyan people are coming across to pick fuel because the prices are high their side. It's also happening on our neighbors, especially where you come from in Kasese, and there are shortages there. What has happened to the promise you made?
The promise is still on, and I would like to assure our viewers and all Ugandans that we are still in charge. But you should also know that we are in a global ecosystem, and therefore what is happening in Uganda is happening elsewhere in the world. Because you should know we are not producers of oil yet. We are also depending on oil from the global ecosystem. And obviously whenever there are disruptions where the oil comes from, it affects us. But it's not only affecting Uganda. Uganda is still at in a better position, because you yourself, you have alluded to it. Kenyans are coming to take fuel from Uganda. The Congolese now are coming also to Uganda in Kasese. That's why most of those places are now getting shortages. But I would like to assure Ugandans, and I think UNOC and Minister of Energy will give you the statistics. I think one thing that we did good, and I think it was by divine intervention, is for us to go into direct purchase of fuel to eliminate middlemen. If we had not done that earlier, and we didn't anticipate war in Iran, but it was a deliberate government decision that we should now bypass all the middlemen, and we go for Vital, and UNOC becomes the major the major dealer with the Vital. Now UNOC gives to all these marketing companies. So we are doing well. There was some disruption, and the minister has explained why it came about. I think in Kenya, even the Minister of Energy resigned, if you have been following news. But we are still in a better standing. Since we have UNOC here, we will give you the actual statistics. And the minister released the statement yesterday, and it is in the media, giving you the statistics and the assurance. But I would like to inform Ugandans that now Vital is also looking for alternative sources of oil, and we are still in a better position.
You say we're in a better position right now, but an ordinary Ugandan is going to a pump and is failing to get fuel. I was watching stories from Soroti. A gentleman moved to 5 pumps and couldn't find fuel, but also it was taking almost between 8 to 5 p.m. for someone to be able to get fuel. There were queues just here in Kampala at a petrol station trying to get fuel. All these stories of Vital, where the oil comes from, that's not what the Ugandan is looking for. What assurance do you give them that the cost of food, the cost of services is not going to go up, especially with the price of fuel going up each and every day?
But those queues are no longer there. I think you should also appreciate that. The queues, I think, were last week, but now the queues are no longer there. The fuel is there. But we are also investigating why the queues, because for us, we still believe there was enough fuel. But we have also found out that there was some pump stations which might have been holding fuel. We are also investigating that, but I can't be certain whether it's true or not. But we are investigating it, and we suspect it. As prices are concerned, I think UNOC and the Assistant Commissioner here are going to give more light. First of all, we don't produce fuel. You know that. We don't produce oil. And you should know that I think by December, a barrel was about $65 per barrel. And now it has gone up to $120 per barrel. So you cannot, and we are lucky because we are still consuming fuel which was brought in, I think around January, which was purchased in February, when the price, the world market price was still a bit low. And we are also lucky that this time UNOC is the main importer of this fuel. Otherwise, if it was still these other middlemen, they would have even started selling us fuel of Feb, which was purchased at a lower price, at a higher price. But automatically, fuel that will come after probably April, I think the price will be a bit higher, because now, even at the world market now, I think it is around 120. I didn't check today, but it is around $120 per barrel. So you must expect some price changes, and obviously there will be a bit of changes in prices. First of all, transport charges might increase slightly. There might also be some changes in food prices. But you should also know that food prices in Uganda don't necessarily depend on fuel prices. They also depend on whether it is a harvesting period or not. So that one is also there.
But government holds the portfolio of a social contract in trust of Ugandans. Does it concern you that Ugandans are concerned that this price is running away and government is not responding to it?
No,
because
government...
You're saying we are lucky, you're saying but what is government doing?
First of all, we run an open market economy. That's what you should know. And to be sincere to you, I would like to be very frank to the public. We discouraged subsidies. That's why we survived the economic shutdown during COVID. Most of the countries which went for subsidies on things like fuel, they now have a very destabilized economy. But for us, we run an open market economy. But I would like to assure Ugandans that as soon as there is stability in Iran and the Middle East, then fuel prices will go down. However, Vital is also looking for alternative sources. And I think these technical officers are going to tell you which other countries we are going for. We are looking for alternative sources where to get slightly cheaper fuel. However, I want to prepare Ugandans that the situation in which we are, since we don't produce fuel, we are automatically going to be affected by the market prices.
And I'll come back to you later, Honorable Minister, about the comments of the President. But let me come to Dr. Patricia. Doctor, I've seen you comment, I've seen the ministers speak to it, I've also seen Tony, his colleague here, also speaking about it. Do we have a looming fuel crisis as a country? Why is this price running away?
No, as my minister has said, government continues to guarantee supply. There is existing supply, there's incoming fuel as we speak, and we've already ordered for the next round that we expect in May or June. What is happening that we all need to understand is that we're in unusual times. There's a conflict, and because of the other geopolitical factors like the changing dollar, which is also associated with a conflict, we are picking fuel further off. As the Honorable Minister said, Vital is looking for alternatives. It's already using other alternatives. So there are a lot of dynamics that have changed. So automatically, when you're in crisis, something changes, you know. So behavior changes. In Uganda, just look at basic things like, maybe it's not basic, but you know, festive season. Transport changes. You go to a supermarket, it has run out. It's not unusual for something to run out. The issue is that to what extent has it run out? So there's panic buying, for instance. We've noticed that fuel that used to be, like you rightly said, between 6, but we estimate it at about $8 million per day. 8 million liters per day that we consume in Uganda. What we've noticed is that we are consuming double that amount. 2 days stock we are consuming in 1 day. A habit, not to offend the men, but men normally drive in red. Now they are filling their tanks. People are filling jerry cans. People have tanks at home. Small industries that have little depots are filling up all these places, which habit wasn't there when people were feeling safe. Additionally, in the border towns, you've mentioned Tororo, Kasese, Kisoro. Adjumani was actually the first place brought to our attention that fuel is now at 8,000. And in Kampala, it was at about 5,400. Our monitoring team went and checked. there was evidence and things like that, and the next day it dropped to 5. So you know, when people sit and say government is not doing anything, we don't have to work in front of the camera. Do you see the difference? Like the minister has just said, that are the queues still there? So when these issues come up to us, we go and check. There are rumors of hoarding, for instance. We have to go and inspect. We've had meetings with the OMC to understand. So of course, if we went in and jumped in and just arrested everyone because someone claimed this is happening, the same public will come to accuse government. So whatever claim is brought to us, we investigate and see how to intervene. But one thing we must appreciate is, as the minister said, what is the cost of fuel at the moment? Like he said, from 65 in December, we're now at $120. How much is UNOC buying fuel? That my colleague, Mr. Otika, is going to talk to those facts. So automatically, this is our business arm as government. We're not going to operate at a loss. Yes, we must factor in that price. So once we bring the fuel that we guarantee is there, there's a point at which the OMCs, the oil marketing companies, must pick the fuel. So sometimes there are logistical problems along the way, some of which were there prior to the conflict, some of which are existing. But also government has contingency plans. We have reservoirs, for instance. We have Ginger that has over 30 million liters, and we are expanding it to over 40. We have Lake Victoria Logistics that has over 70 million liters. We have the Nakasongola Reservoir under Ministry of Defense, so I won't speak too much into that. But we are also putting up the Kampala terminal that will be in PG. So you see, there is long-term plan, there's medium plan, there's existing plan. But also, the conflict automatically teaches us certain things that perhaps we hadn't prepared for. But in terms of supply, we insist and we know that we guarantee supply because it is there. Why are they accused? Because of panic buying. We're also allowing at cross borders, neighbors, of course those cross-border activities are always there. Even Ugandans, when we hear soda or sugar is cheaper in Kenya, we'll go. I come from a border town, Tororo. We go and shop across. But you're limited to how much sugar you can bring. So in the same spirit, these cross-border neighbors would normally come from Congo, from Kenya, from Rwanda. You know, they come and fuel in Uganda. Now they are coming to fuel a whole tank. And as a business person, it makes business sense to sell. Government is saying, let's be patriotic. This fuel was destined for Uganda. Can we ensure most Ugandans benefit? Yes, you can trade to the neighbors, but there could be restrictions. And I know you'll ask me this, so let me just tell you, one of the measures we've already put in border points, for instance, is to have security monitor and have restrictions. We are discouraging people from buying in jerrycans, for instance, especially petrol. It is not criminal, but it's hazardous. The health and safety reasons. Your house could catch fire, which could spread to the neighbors. So we encourage people to only purchase what they are going to consume. And because of these panic behaviors, because of the conflict, shortage automatically is created, and there are all these rumors, so there's generally panic everywhere, and it causes the crisis. But we're trying to normalize putting certain measures in place. If a place is rumored to be hiking prices, we go there. Like you rightly said, Soroti. Last week on Friday, I was here on UBC on the morning show, Good Morning Uganda, and a caller told us somewhere in Soroti, there's a station selling fuel at 25,000. That is criminal, yes? If even 8,000 was alarming us. So what we request the public, I even offered a number. Please send us messages, send us evidence. It's not enough to shout on social media, to shout in the media, and claim these things. Where is it? Is there a contact? Can we go there? Yes, we monitor, but we're not everywhere every time. So it helps us take quick action to basically mitigate such behavior.
Dr. Patricia, why isn't government coming ahead to drive the narrative? Because you're allowing all these pockets to make misinformation to the public. Hence you're hearing 25,000, 8,000, 9,000. If you came in front of this narrative, wouldn't this help especially to create the confidence you're looking for in the public? Why aren't you doing it?
No. We are doing it. We are here. Since March, ever since the conflict, literally every week, we've engaged with the media to inform the public using different channels. Now, when someone calls and says there's fuel being sold at 25,000 somewhere, we go and investigate, you know, to see if that is actually happening. And we've explained that our economy is a liberal one. We allow the OMCs to follow the principles of demand and supply. However, if we feel the price has gone too high, like the 8,000, we come in and intervene. And we don't have to explain every little thing. Now we are turning left, now we are turning right. No, that's information overload. We speak to what is important and necessary. For instance, the questions you're asking, that's what the public needs to know. So for instance, when the changes started happening, we saw an increase by about 200, 300 shillings, and that seemed fair. Much as people were already complaining, when you look at demand and supply, that seemed fair. And government was investigating those who had already reached 6,000 and 7,000 because we are saying this is old stock that we brought in before the conflict started. You have no business selling it at a higher price. But now the shipments we had thereafter, obviously the dollar had already gone up, so there's a little markup, and that is factored in automatically. But still, we shouldn't be seeing 7,000. So we go in and check. Yes, but we allow the forces of demand and supply. But it's happened before. For instance, I think in 2007, government came in and intervened and put a cap. So if we feel we have reached that level, obviously we'll come and say, okay, based on the Petroleum Supply Act, this is the intervention we are taking. Yes, but we must allow certain things to happen. We must observe. And for me, really, the most important thing, the public must appreciate that we are in unusual times and a lot of things are changing. If you've been in war before, if you've been in conflict before, there's scarcity. So obviously there are certain dynamics. In Uganda, there's a point where government was the one issuing sugar. So, but we haven't gotten there yet, and we'll speak to that. But already that strategy, that forward thinking, that we had government now doing the bulk purchase, enables us also control, because we know at how much we buy, and then we allow to a certain extent.
At what point, because the Honorable Minister, Ruth Nangabwa, said, especially in her first address towards the end of March, where she said, you know what, when petrol stations get out of hand to be able to have exorbitant prices, will come in to whip them. At what point do you balance the carrot and stick, but also there's a Consumers Protection Act that is really, we're not hearing you doing something about the consumer. You seem to be doing well with UNOC and supplying, but the end user is not feeling protected from any of these prices there.
The end user needs to appreciate the circumstances we are in. And the end user wants to hear what it wants to hear. What government is saying, we're in unusual times. As government, we are assuring supply. It's like assuring your home you won't go hungry. But if the thieves come and break in, as the man, what do? You must have a contingency measure, either have dogs or things like that. But it doesn't mean that your dogs go and bite everyone passing along the road. What am I saying? I'm saying that government has contingency measures. It cares about the public. That's why it ensures there's supply. Because like you've rightly said, if there's no supply and the price goes up, there's an impact. But now we are in unusual times where we are picking fuel further away. So sometimes it takes longer for the vessel to reach. But since before March we've been bringing fuel, why isn't it reaching you? Or when it reaches you, why does it run out so quickly? Those are the things we investigate. For instance, if you picked fuel from the depot this morning, maybe 100 liters or 1 million liters, and by evening or by midday you've run out, what happened? We need to check that. So like I told you, we noticed, for instance, the statistics are there, that there's unusual purchase, even in the middle of Kampala, leave alone the border towns, those ones we've explained. If we used to consume 18 million liters a day, and now we are doing 16, why? People will tell you people are filling their tanks, people are bringing jerry cans. So now government is saying, we are going to come and put a stop to that, so that we don't create an artificial shortage. We have an artificial shortage at the moment. Because for us, we are bringing the volumes. And we are bringing the volumes that Uganda has always consumed. And some people are like, why aren't you bringing more? Because the route through which we bring the fuel has remained the same. The vessel capacity remains the same. The pipeline remains the same. So where do we put this excess? That's why we are planning ahead, building the 320 million liter storage in Mpigi. Will be called the Kampala, I think, terminal. I think Mr. Tika will speak to that. We are expanding Jinja terminal. from 30 million to 40 million. We have 70 million, and we have another reservoir in Nakasongola that Ministry of Defense oversees. So there are things we are trying to put in place to make sure things are available under the circumstances. The public should bear and appreciate that government is doing whatever is possible under the circumstances.
I'll come back to you. Let me come to Ambassador Stevens. Ambassador, especially with the UAE yesterday announcing that it would be leaving, withdrawing from OPEC and OPEC Plus, what does that mean? Because they have been at this with 3.5 million barrels per day. What does this mean, especially looking, we already have a crisis. Now we have 3.5 million barrels that won't be coming to the market. What does that mean for us as a country?
Thank you very much. I think that is a very good point you raised. Definitely, it is like adding salt to injury. It will distort the markets. The supply conditions are likely to be further disrupted, and that will add deeper into the crisis. But having said that, I just want to bring it back home closely, having listened to Honorable Minister and my colleague Doctor here. I think looking at the current situation, government must work closely with the markets. There cannot be such huge distance between the markets, energy markets, and the government. They must work closely together. What I see is a gap, and that gap is seen in terms of communication, having a common approach to addressing this, what I would call pain at the pump. There's definitely pain at the pump, and it's going to continue. So how do we deal with it? And I want to, reflecting on my colleagues' presentations here, I just want to quickly move into what I would call crisis mitigation measures. Because we're in a crisis. We can't bury our heads in the sand. One, we all recognize that government has done well through this centralized importation through UNOC. That's fine. It has had some positive effects, but there are also gaps in that regard. And the gaps come in the sense that allocations to OMCs are not 100% guaranteed. And an OMC may have a requirement of, say, 5 million liters, but they are given 3 million. Now, that gap creates a shortage. Of course, we know the dominant players in the market.
Yes.
I'm associated with one, but I'm not talking on their behalf. I'm speaking like Stephen Kaboyo here, as a Ugandan. Now, if you have two dominant players who account for over 40% of the market, and their requirements, fuel requirements, are not allocated fully by UNOC, they are forced to go to the secondary market to purchase stock or product at a higher price. That price will be passed on to the end user that you talked about.
Yes.
So that differential between the primary market and the secondary market adds a premium that the consumer gets to pay. That's the pain at the pump I'm talking about. Now, if UNOC was meeting all the allocations 100%, that secondary market, primary market, secondary market distortion would not occur. I think government must look at that. The second issue is allocation to market players that do not have service stations. They take product. And what product, what for? That's where now the holding issue comes in place. If you do not have a petrol station, why do you get an allocation from government? It must go to strictly those who have fuel stations. Now, that also causes distortions. I think UNOC must look at that and check it to address market distortions. Market distortions create a price imbalance. The other issue which I would like to propose here, the Honorable Minister is here, Unok is here, my colleague is here from the ministry, is a centralized system of importation is good, but in these unusual times, why can't we think outside of the box and say, can we allow some OMCs a short window, maybe 2 months, 3 months period, those that have capacity to import their own product, which can supplement UNOC. We're not changing the rules of the game. We are saying this is a special intervention to address this crisis that we have. Clearly, if you forecast, and I was looking at Platts futures before I came here, Platts is indicating, Platts is the gauge that shows you price movement, active price movement. It shows very serious and steep volatility going forward. It's putting a barrel at 150 in the next few months or couple of weeks. Where does that leave us? Of course, it comes with a lag effect. The Honorable Minister here mentioned that what we're enjoying now are prices of January. But you wait when the prices of March, April hit with the lag effect. What will that do? So projections are that we could hit 8,000, 10,000 shillings a liter of fuel come May, end of May or June. Actually, when you look at Europe, in Europe, some countries in Europe, for example, France, a liter of fuel, of petrol, is equivalent to 12,000 Uganda shillings in Europe. So who are we to remain here and say, for now we are okay, we are safe? I think we need to come up with special quick interventions, and one of them is allow that special allowance for OMCs that have capacity to import their own product, supplement UNOC. The other critical one is, and this is more addressed to the fiscal authorities. In times like this, government is proposing a tax on fuel. Now, where do we have our priorities? Do you introduce tax in a crisis period like this? Many governments have actually abandoned taxation or even reduced taxation to address this challenge. But in Uganda, we're going ahead with 200, is it 200 and 200?
Yes, 200 excise duty, 200 shillings.
Yes. So why can't we hold on to that? I think that's another issue that we must be able to look at and maybe put that on hold. The last one, again, my colleagues have talked about, is effective communication. We seem to react to a crisis. We do not look ahead and address and effectively communicate to the market so that we build confidence and discourage panic buying. Because clearly now, the communication that is not properly aligned is starting to cause panic buying. You get a call that said, go and fill up a pump at your tank at Gaba fuel station. That's the only place that has petrol. They're going to run out in 2 weeks, in 2 days. You run, everybody runs there. They find it's finished. They say now another one is in Nakawa. That sort of action must be managed by effective government communication. Communicate effectively, way ahead of time, because you have all the information. Let's have an information sharing platforms through Honorable Minister of ICT here and information to be able to inform the public on routinely on a continuous basis so that everybody is calm and is confident in the market. Thank you very much.
You know, you mentioned effective communication, and I remember the mayor of New York, especially when the Twin Towers were bombed, came in and gave periodic updates on what was happening. But before I leave you, Ambassador, what are the likely impacts on the economy in the short term, medium term, and the long term?
Clearly, the situation we're in right now triggers widespread economic strain. And this cuts across all economic sectors. It comes through production, comes through manufacturing, transport costs, logistics, because fuel is a key ingredient in all economic activities that we do. So that creates a cost push inflation. Inflation, let's touch wood. Tomorrow the numbers for April are going to come out. I'm sure there will be an upward movement of the CPI. It's likely to accelerate as we go forward. We know the dangers of inflation, increase the cost of living of the households, but it does not only hit the households, it hits businesses. Mr. Olgembe is here, he will tell you. Businesses are going to get hit, both small and big and manufacturing. Prices of services, goods and services are going to go up. And for me, this derails the sort of the sustainable economic growth trajectory that we have been all singing about. So the worst is yet to come, in my view. And we don't live in isolation. We are part of the global economy. We shall be hit. Of course, you have also to consider this amongst other challenges we have. We have our own challenges as a domestic economy, in the domestic economy. High debt service costs, very limited fiscal space, low revenue collections. Now, this is going to add to that basket of problems. So the future outlook looks bleak in my view, and we are not in a good place.
Thank you. Dr. Olgembe, let me come to you, especially because you have the Omuntu Wawansi. Ambassador Stephen has just painted, he has become a prophet of doom, giving us a reality of what is happening there. The people in the small and medium enterprises, fuel is a driver for their services, for their goods. Let it be import, let it be export, let it be any other place you're taking it.
Yeah.
Have you felt these shocks yet, or not yet?
No, we are we are starting to feel them, and I think we will feel them. I would say that the global supply shock that has been occasioned by the war in Iran is one that will be felt at home. Uganda is a net importer of petroleum products. It is a price taker, so in that regard, it's even a miracle that we've been cushioned so far. From, if you look at bigger economies, if you look at India, if you look at the Philippines, if you look at the West, you find that they've been able to get shocked much faster. And it's almost miraculous that a smaller country like ours has been cushioned to a certain extent. And I would agree with the minister that the decision to allow UNOC to be a sole importer helped. But I would also agree with the ambassador that if we think that by relaxing this status quo to ease supply, we can, to a certain extent, cushion ourselves further, then that's something that should be considered. Now, for businesses, the impact is mainly through inflation. Inflation because you've seen global, of course, the price of crude globally has gone up. There's a projection it might reach 150. It has hit 115, it has come down and so on, and it's still up. And unfortunately, the cause of the problem, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, is still not resolved. So those high prices will be transmitted to us one way or the other. And then because fuel is also driving the economy, transportation and so on and so forth, it means that higher transportation costs, logistical challenges and all that will cause the prices of inputs to increase. especially for manufacturing enterprises. It will cause the prices of goods that are imported, because as a country, we import so many commodities. So those commodities will start to become expensive over time. And as they become more expensive, Ugandans will start to feel the pinch. Not just Ugandans, the whole world will start to feel the pinch. And unfortunately, the central bank in these kinds of situations has its hands tied, because this kind of imported inflation is difficult to deal with because the cause is without. It's not something that you can deal with conclusively with the tools at your disposal. So we must state clearly that businesses must prepare mentally that this shock will hit them. You see, we had this kind of situation when we had the 2008 financial crisis. When the financial crisis hit the West, it hit our businesses here in 2011. I remember I went to Parliament, someone who had been servicing a loan, maybe say they were paying 10 million. Now they are being required to pay 20 million. You know, so these kinds of things sometimes take time, but in the end, they hit us. So I would say that businesses must be mentally prepared. Of course, UNOC is assuring Ugandans that, because if UNOC again was also coming and saying the situation is bad and so on, it would create panic. So what the approach that they're adopting of assuring Ugandans is correct, but it's also important that we tell Ugandans that they make the right calculations. And I see very many countries starting to advise their citizens to kind of cut down on consumption and to change, to make certain lifestyle choices that will help reduce consumption in the country. So what I would urge is that as a country, we must also warn ourselves and say, this situation might be here for some time. Let us start to... Hoarding is one thing, but hoarding is not sustainable. You know, you can fill that tank and so on. But if you maintain your level of consumption, of being wasteful, then it won't help in the long term. So I would say that now is the time to actually warn Ugandans and say, you know what, UNOC is doing its best, and but you as a business owner, you must also do your part to ensure that you're able to manage those dynamics within the business. I also wish to comment on the issue of the tax proposals. Of course, these are proposals that are meant to be effective starting 1st July. So my advice would be that before these measures come into effect, it would be nice that this is a measure that can be paused, maybe for a couple of months until the situation stabilizes. Obviously, for government, it would also be a huge shock to its revenue, because this tax on fuel brings in very easy money next to pay as you earn. So for them to say we are holding it, it means that government itself would be shocked. Where are you getting money to fill the gap? But it's something that they should consider for the overall health of the economy, at least in the short term. If by July these issues still pertain, my advice would be please consider halting it for 2 to 3 months until the situation becomes more stable. But for businesses, my advice would be that we have to tighten our belts, and businesses are already feeling the heat. And for the businesses, they're feeling the heat. For the consumer, not so much. But in a couple of months, you'll start to see these kinds of inflationary transmissions start to hit people's pockets.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me come to Rashid. The minister referred to you, and also Dr. Patricia referred to you, so it seems like you have all the answers. So let's start from there. The first that came in March was you had fuel worth 21 days, that was diesel. 26 days of petrol, 40 days of jet fuel. The most recent that came through was you had 283 million liters of fuel, worth 60 days for petrol, 51 days for diesel, jet fuel worth 38 days. The most recent at the oil and gas conversion was 163 liters for 67 days petrol, 200 liters for 60 days diesel. What do you actually have?
Yeah, thank you. And I think I will start from the point of acknowledging the fact that I think it was a very good move by government to empower UNOC to import the petroleum products on behalf of the country. And when that responsibility came to us, huge as it was, we were strong, because with the support of government, we partnered with the global leader in terms of trading of both petroleum products and crude and that is Vitol. Why? Because we were sure that with their presence all over the world, it guaranteed us supply. And if you notice, it's easy to forget, but we had a good, seamless transition. That's because of the capacity and the assurances in terms of supply that we benefited from our supply partner, young as we are. Don't forget, we've just been implementing this mandate just above 1 year. We're yet to make 2 years. Now, in terms of stocking, the way it works is every day the stock position changes. Every day. Mm-hmm. Why? Because every day we are loading around 230 trucks of fuel from Western Kenya to come into the country. Every day. Every day we are monitoring the movement of the vessel. Where has this vessel reached? So the figures that we submit to the ministry are not wish list. These are figures that are interrogated in our meetings with Vitol. We meet twice a week. And in those meetings, we identify where has this vessel reached. Has it loaded or not? Until a vessel loads, we cannot account for that stock. So it's like having a supply of water. You have your tank at home, it's full, but National Water is still supplying. Now, once your tank goes down, for as long as you have continuity of supply, you say, I have water. Until National Water comes and says, we don't have water anymore, that's when you can ring a bell. Where we are, Vitol has given UNOC, Vitol has given the government of Uganda assurance that with regards to supply of petroleum products for Uganda, there's continuity. That commitment has been delivered both in writing but also in the engagements. They've come here and discussed that. So we want to assure Uganda that as far as supply of petroleum products is concerned, we are guaranteed. We have stocks. Where we speak today, when I look at the figures, as at this morning, we have more than 2 months of supply to sustain us, more than 2 months.
So now, of course, May and June. Eh?
May and June.
Okay.
Of course, you'd ask yourself, okay, if we have supplies, how comes when I go to the station, there's no fuel? It happened to me as well yesterday. But that only comes because of the logistical arrangements. So in any supply chain, you have the movement of goods, but also there has to be a replicating movement of information to feed into the logistics that we are seeing some kind of spike, please send more. Now, whereas we bring the product all the way to Mombasa, all the way to Dar es Salaam, all the way to Jinja, all the way to Mahati, what has been happening around the border, like you've mentioned yourself, the information has not been coming back quickly. Now, of course, you mention and say, how comes Shell, Total, name them, are running out? It's because, for me, of two things. One, the business principles. Whereas the market is deregulated, there are business principles that we hold ourselves accountable to. Vitol has demonstrated that by not raising their prices to us for the products that we committed to import. Like the minister has indicated, we are delivering January and February demand right now. Any other supplier would have said, things have changed, it's not business as usual, so my price is going to change. Vitol has maintained their price. What we have done as well as UNOC, based on the responsibility we have to Ugandans, as instructed by the government, is to contribute to the lowering of the pump prices. So every time we are invoicing the oil marketing companies, whose responsibility now is to distribute the fuel to Ugandans, we put that into consideration. This price that we are going to give the oil marketing companies, how are they going to transmit it to Ugandans? Where we see there will be a significant impact, we lower on our margin that we make to make sure that the impact on Ugandans is not as heavy as possible. Now, once we give them the price and we notice that what is being reflected in the market is not what we expected, of course we reach out to the ministry and say, hang on a second, we see that company X the price they're selling is not the right price. In some cases, we talk to them ourselves and say, hey, what's going on? The batch we've given you should not be reflecting the prices you're showing there. But what has happened because of the narrative is, when we planned, we didn't plan for our neighbors, because our neighbors are supplied by the Kenyan system. Now, because there's fuel in Uganda at a cheaper price, the neighbors came in. Now, when the neighbors came in, of course, because they don't have fuel in their country, they are able to buy it at any price. That's why, for the first time, you will see that a small station down in my village in Kitgum has a higher price than the big players we know. Because in most cases, they are supposed to be following the big players. But at a point where they know, I have bought all the fuel from that Shell station, I have it with me, I'm going to sell it at any price. So when you go there, the fuel is not there, and you end up buying from a smaller player at high price. So all I can say is that in terms of supply of petroleum products, we want to assure Ugandans, as has been submitted by the minister yesterday, we have ample stocks to sustain us. The key challenge is, of course, the pricing is not going to be the same. As has been mentioned by the minister, we're in a global village. What government has challenged us, and we're working with our supply partner, how can we smoothen that effect on Ugandans? And there's a level to which you can do that. So far, what we've done is we've remained principled to say, we bought based on January plots, we will give it to you based on January plots. Now, when March, April plots come on board, that is around July onwards, what are we doing to make sure that the impact is not heavy on Ugandans? We are thinking about it, of course, we're brainstorming. We have some ideas, but it's only going to be able to be implemented to the extent that the war stops. If the war continues, definitely, yes, you can smoothen out, but there's a level whereby it will catch up with you. So in reality is, as far as Uganda is concerned, our neighbors look at us and say, we are a role model of what has happened in terms of supply of fuel for the nation.
How significant would the change be? Because you mentioned July, you also mentioned a few things there, that as you take a back seat, especially on the price there, to be able to cushion the Ugandans. But the question I want to put to you is, what is your prediction for July, especially for Ugandans, if you can give us any numbers in your projections there?
It's not easy to easily project. All I can say is that if we were not doing anything about it, maybe the price right now would have been around 7,000 shillings on a pump, around 7,000.
Wow.
But because we have cheaper product, when you mix there's what we call weighted averages. When you mix cheaper product with slightly expensive product, you're able to bring that down to around 6,000. So those are the things that we're trying to work through. But there's a level to which probably, if the war continues, definitely, it will catch up with us in that we'll have exhausted all our cheap product, and now what we have is the expensive product. But between now and then, there should not be any reason for panic. Like the minister has said, if you buy product and keep it in your home, first of all, it's not safe. But secondly, there's a limit to how much you can keep.
And I'll come to the communication question that the ambassador mentioned there, because you have very many good things you're doing that Ugandans are not aware of what you're doing. But let me ask, what is, and Dr. Patricia is here, what's the understanding between UNOC, Ministry of Energy, and the biggest, and the players in the market? Because you just mentioned an example, it's hypothetical, but petrol station X, because it's a big player, is buying from and then holding to when the price goes up or dictating the price. What agreement or what arrangements do we have with these players in the market?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I'll start, the way the supply chain is that we have Vitol, who's a supplier, and then you have UNOC, who's the importer, the primary importer. Between Vitol and UNOC, we have an agreement. And that agreement stipulates at what price Vitol can sell to us. And the biggest component of the cost of our product is the international prices. Between UNOC and the oil marketing companies, we also have an agreement. Not all of them. There are those who have signed up to us. And it's wholesale. You must have the financial capability to pay us on time, so that we pay Vitol on time to ensure there's continuity of supply, right?
There's a lot of on time.
Yeah. So that's what has kept the fuel flowing. Now, UNOC and the oil marketing companies, we are regulated by the ministry. Yeah, UNOC and the oil marketing companies were all regulated by the ministry. What is happening right now because of the situation is that we're having routine collaboration on a weekly basis. We update the ministry, this is the situation of supply, and this is how we expect the pricing to be going forwards. And the ministry engages the oil marketing companies to say, we are watching, we know that UNOC has given you based on these plots, and we do not expect you to exploit Ugandans. What I mentioned there, if I can clarify, a very organized oil marketing company will have clear principles. My brother or sister, who has a small station, who has been selling 200 liters a day, all of a sudden sees a huge demand, people are asking. And you know, the way fuel works is that you just need to have 2 or 3 people ask the same question. I need 1,000 liters. I need 1,000 liters 3 times. All of a sudden, there's an opportunity. And of course, we know that with businessmen, whenever there's an opportunity, you put in the money. So my sister will come and say, by the way, lend me some money, I've seen an opportunity. When they go and buy that fuel at that low level, they're going to sell at any price. And that price, unfortunately, that's why the social media will pick up and say, this is where the market has gone. But that's not where the market has gone. If you look at the market, you look at the average prices of the major players. That gives you a clear indication of where the prices are.
Finally, before I go back to the Honorable Minister, the Honorable Minister, Ruth Nankabiro, mentioned that UNOC is looking at different sources. What does this mean, and what impact does it have on a Ugandan, especially going to a pump?
Thank you for that. I think we were discussing, and there's always a saying that don't put your eggs in one basket. When we were negotiating with Vitol, it came out very clearly, why is government forcing or arranging for UNOC to work with only one partner? Why not have multiple partners? I'll give an example. In a neighborhood, we have, not only in a neighborhood, Ethiopia, Kenya, mention them, they have multiple suppliers. The benefit we have with our supply partner is that they are globally present. So you have, yes, one supply partner, but globally present. So today, for example, the vessel that the fuel we're consuming, the petrol we're consuming today, is coming from Europe. Yeah, that is a different supply source. The diesel we're consuming is coming from all the way from India, sometimes all the way from the Americas. They are able to source. Why? Because they appreciate the fact that government has entrusted them. Because when government was overseeing the agreement between UNOC and Vitol, it was very clear this is not a normal agreement. Vitol were handing over the responsibility of supplying Uganda to you, but through UNOC. Yeah, to you, but through UNOC. So they appreciate that responsibility as well, to make sure that at least at all times we have fuel supplied into the country. So they are able to source from all over the world and make sure that we have fuel. That's why we say, with regards to supply, there should not be any panic.
Okay, let me read some feedback before we take a break. I'll come back from the break to meet the minister there. Timothy, thank you for the show. Uganda's government is more of a business than a service delivery. They're enjoying fuel prices to increase because many officials benefit from it. This is teacher Simo Julius from Katete. Okay. Drilling fuel in Uganda is now becoming like musician songs, which every year they are singing about. I remember they said in 2023 we would be enjoying our fuel. Last year again by March. Will there be fuel? Will our fuel right now still be there, or we do not know when the transporting or it's to other countries will happen? I know Uganda is with money, And the person puts emojis of crying there. Timothy, thank you for the show. The Honorable Minister, please ask him about the President's remarks when the war escalated in Ukraine, that Uganda should avoid eating bread and resort to cassava, so that the time when it's a suitable alternative, now that in Serere fuel costs 15,000. I think, Dr. Patricia, you need to take note of that. Someone is making a claim that in Serere fuel is at 15,000. It's unfortunate that you guys keep coming on TV to fool us. Fuel prices are going high each day, okay? Good evening, Timothy. This is Pade from in Toroko district. I would like to hear an assurance from the State Minister of ICT and National Guidance if there is any hope for the hiked prices will one time end, since in Uganda oil was discovered long time ago, but some Ugandans not sure when to start benefiting from it, because here in Toroko, a distance which was usually 1K of a border is now 3,000 shillings. Something like that. Thank you. Okay. Finally, before we take a break, Agaba here from Isinjiro says the US Secretary of Energy says fuel prices may not drop before 2027. In Uganda, that does not sound like news. It sounds like a policy by default, because here fuel prices go up quickly but rarely come down with the same urgency. Already prices are about 12% higher than last year, and every increase is passed on directly to the citizen. What is the national strategy for the energy security? I think that is Dr. Patricia here. Where is the urgency on alternatives? Where is the protection for the taxpayer who carries the entire burden? We are told to be patient, to understand the global markets and to adjust. But to adjust without policy direction is not resilience, it's neglect. If leaders know fuel will remain expensive for years, then the real question is, what exactly is being done different today to protect Ugandans tomorrow? Or we are simply managing a crisis we have no plan to solve. This is Agaba in Isinjiro. Okay? Quite pertinent questions there asked. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll delve into solutions moving forward.
By strangers. Save yourself from insults. Use the Momo app or dial *165 *3# to pay and enjoy zero charges below 5K. That's the power of Momo.
It's back, bigger, and with more business opportunities. It's the Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo, Poate 2026, Uganda's flagship tourism event. Poate 2026 will take place from the 21st to the 23rd of May 2026 at the Speak Resort Convention Center, Munyonyo, under the theme Wanderlust. It's your time to thrive. Yes, it's your time to tap into Uganda's renewed optimism and tourism growth. Tourism stakeholders, travel trade partners, and tourism enthusiasts will be part of the Poate 2026. Come and network with like-minded people and unlock new business opportunities. To participate, register at www.poate.co.ug. Poate 2026 is brought to you by Uganda Tourism Board and partners.
For decades, farmers have battled the persistent threat of ticks and tick-borne diseases. These diseases lead to animal death, reduced productivity, higher costs, and lower farmer incomes. But today, science, led by the National Agricultural Research Organization, NARO, delivers a breakthrough. The NARO and-tick vaccine, a proudly Ugandan innovation funded by the government of Uganda, is poised to transform livestock health and strengthen economic prosperity. It will reduce tick infestation, lower production costs, increase productivity, and open new opportunities for regional trade and export growth. His Excellency General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of the Republic of Uganda, will on Thursday 30th April 2026 officially launch the narrow and tick vaccine and commission the production plant at the National Livestock Resources Research Institute at Nache Sasa in Wakiso District. There will be a live broadcast of the event on UBC TV starting at 10 a.m. As well, live updates online. Please note, attendance is by invitation only. Announced by the National Agriculture Research Organization, NARO.
The government's commandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of a roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
It's going to be a tall project. That answers somebody's question.
The front bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice, and commerce.
When you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers, you bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge, these are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport.
If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda. Welcome back from that quick break here on Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. We're talking about fuel, especially the rising prices that would affect your pocket, but also affect the economy for all of us. It is not just an effect for the country, but also the region and the globe at large. There are also some things we'll be bringing to sight even as we go on. But let me read one message so that I can give Dr. Patricia and the Minister to respond to some of the things that have been raised so that we can dig into this show further. Dear Timothy, thank you for the current situation. I believe the following measures should be taken. Immediate action between 0 to 3. Monthly active enforcement strategy reserves to ensure UNOC maintains a release that is mandatory of 21 days of stock to stabilize the supply, prevent panic buying. Current reserves are standing at between 22 and 30 days of national cover. Diversify import routes, accelerate fuel import through Dar es Salaam, Tanga, and to reduce over-reliance on Mombasa and the KPC pipeline there. Notably, Kenya itself requested fuel from Uganda during the March-April 2026 disruption, underscoring the need for alternative routes. 3, police to arrest and deal with those and investigate those who are hoarding fuel and sanction oil companies found to be hoarding or re-exporting fuel to create artificial shortages there. I think that Dr. Patricia mentioned. Introduce temporary tax relief. Consider suspending some taxes and levies there, which currently make up approximately 31% of the pump price, to cushion customers as the global oil prices reach $86 to $90 per barrel. This is Santon Ojara in Gulu City. Thank you very much for that. Dr. Patricia or the Honorable Minister, quick comments before we take on our next round of questions. I'll start with the Honorable Minister. You wanted to respond to some things.
I think one thing which Ambassador here talked about, which I've taken note of, is closing the communication gap. And indeed, we shall work closely with the Ministry of Energy to see that we close that. Because we have platforms where we can post information. Anytime we have the media center now, we have Government Citizens Interaction Center, and then we have UBC, where we have really a lot of opening, where we can we can give a brief nearly every morning, Good Morning Uganda, so that people can know what is taking place. I would like to assure the viewers that that one we are going to do. We shall work closely with the Ministry of Energy, then UNOC, to see that people get daily information, daily updates, and then they can plan very well. Advising citizens on lifestyle, we have started doing that. We have started advising citizens, for instance, use one car. If you are all working in the center of town, and probably the children are on that route, just use one car, husband and wife. But you know, using 4 cars coming from the same home, going to the same place, may not be very convenient. We are already on social media and other platforms advising people. On the taxation, the 200 shillings, obviously the excise duty amendment bill is already passed, but you know, this is government. We are monitoring the prices, and we shall always we shall act appropriately where we see the prices are shooting up. I may not give you any position now, but as government, one of our responsibilities is to ensure we protect the citizens, and then we also make money because we need taxes to keep moving. But the citizen is also a very important person that we need to protect. And I think one person is talking about when are we getting our fuel, our own oil out of the ground. The latest I have is last cabinet, the minister briefed us, and he says technical commissioning will be at the end of July. And by the end of the year, probably we shall have the first barrel out. However, what people don't know is that it's crude oil. That's also something you should know. Because people think as soon as it comes out and then we shall take to the pump stations. No, what we are going to get out of the ground is crude oil. So we have to send it for refining in the refinery. We haven't put up a refinery yet, but the minister has already updated us that probably in the next 3 to 4 years we shall have a refinery built here in Uganda, and therefore we can be able to process. And one person was saying, you know, last time the president said, if you can't get wheat, you should eat cassava. You know, people made a lot of, they were making a lot, about, should I call it noise, about the war in Ukraine and then the scarcity of wheat. But the war is still there, and I haven't seen any change. People are eating chapati as usual. And,
Honorable Minister, allow me add to the person's comment there, because I think over the weekend the president mentioned and said, where are you going? You stay home. So really, people have to go out and make a living. Do those comments...
No, I think he didn't say that people who are working shouldn't go. But people who are moving to... You know that people come to town just to come and see what is taking place. Yes, I'm telling you. You know me, I was a mayor of a town. And I used to move around the Kasese town. And I would meet someone seated in the veranda of someone. And I ask, where did you come? He came from Kirembe just to come and see what is to come and listen and see what is taking place in town. At the end of the day, he's not even working. And then, obviously, he was also talking about people who are moving for pleasure. And he was also saying, he was also actually trying, I think it was some sort of lifestyle, sort of audit. You should audit your lifestyle. If you used to go to Munyonyo every weekend, you know that there is now that additional expense of fuel. And if you are moving with 10 vehicles, go with what?
With one.
With one. But you know, our president is playing. So sometimes people misunderstand him. But he was saying, don't go to town if you have nothing serious to do there. And I would also like to reaffirm re-echo that, please don't go to town unless you have something which will be taking you there. These are the issues of diversifying the import routes. I think we are working on that. The minister, the Honorable Canon Dr. Ruth Nangabira, you know, the minister has so many titles, so you have to mention all of them. He has been in a meeting. She has just come back from a meeting, and they were looking at all those diversification of routes. So it's not really, and then what other alternatives? We are not sleeping. For instance, now we want to go, we want to introduce electric buses to do town service, and that one is being negotiated with the Minister of Science and Technology and Minister of Energy. And you should know that there is now a company now manufacturing, I think, assembling electric motorcycles. So all those are interventions which we are coming up with as government. So we are not really sleeping. And there is now a company which is producing ethanol. And I think the ministry and UNOC are trying to see how, what do you call it? Fuel blending. I think we call it fuel blending. I think it is the percentages which you are still having problems. The UNOC and the Assistant Commissioner can talk about it. But all those are now things we are thinking about. Can we blend with ethanol? Can we now devise people to go for electric motorcycles, which are already being assembled here? Town service, can we now introduce electric buses? Because Kira Motors says they have 10 buses which are now ready for town service, and they want to see how far they can go. But we are also trying to build now charging stations, so that if possible, we should even import electric buses as an alternative.
What does this crisis or this situation mean for national security? Because I don't know if you move around as much, but you'll find an exodus of people walking to town, an exodus of people walking back. You have recently also been, you talked about a number of people that had been arrested with petty crimes there. Does this concern government that, especially with how expensive life could be, people could resort to crime?
You know, Timothy, government has a responsibility of protecting people and their property. And so all those petty crimes, we know that they can arise out of that, and we are ready. We are ready for it. All the security apparatus is ready for it. And let me tell you one thing. Uganda, one thing why NRM is still surviving in power is the issue of security. Everybody, even if you go to your grandmother in the village, you will vote for Museveni because he has brought what? Peace. So there we can't compromise on matters of what? Of security. Yes, people might be walking now because probably transport is a bit expensive, and that's why we are saying you have to change some lifestyle. By the way, also Ugandans have become a bit, I don't know. You know, in Kenya people walk, and you see, but Uganda here, even when you are coming, even when I'm coming from my office at ICT to UBC, I jump on a border. I jump on the border. I don't know why we have changed that type. That lifestyle is also not what? Not so good. People are no longer used to walking. But before the advent of these borders, I used to work on 7th Street when I in the 90s. And I was sleeping in Kololo with my brother. I used to walk from Kololo to 7th Street to work every day and come back walking. And I didn't see any problem with it. So we have to change our lifestyle in such a time of crisis. And this crisis is not exclusive to Uganda. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And Uganda is still standing at TV in a better position. That's why people are coming even to purchase fuel from here.
Okay.
But we pray that this war can end. But just as Ambassador said, even if it ends today, we shouldn't expect the supply chain to improve immediately, because I think you are following what is taking place there. Refineries have been what? Destroyed. Carriers have been destroyed. So it will also take another 1 to 2 years to come back to normal. But we pray that the war ends, and then we can be assured of recovery as soon as possible.
Thank you. Dr. Patricia, you had some to respond to, then my question will come after.
Yes, so like Honorable Minister has emphasized, Uganda is not cushioned from global shocks. That being said, we are managing the situation, and something that doesn't look like a blessing has actually protected Uganda. The fact that we are landlocked or land-linked, as we these days prefer to say it, meant that we always planned ahead. We didn't know this crisis was coming, but there was a choice made by government to bring UNOC on board. And much as the question that was asked seemed to insinuate that government doesn't have strategy, government has several strategies, UNOC being one of those strategies. So you see, what we do is that we continuously supply. Yes, and that, I was sort of, well, it wasn't my question, it was Mr. Tika's question. You asked him the other day, you claimed this, you got exactly how many liters do you have? First of all, people consume fuel every day. So if right now I'm telling you I have 169 million liters, tomorrow morning there won't be any. Because even just the few of us here are possibly going to fuel if we find it. On our way, we already reduced the stock. So we have that in mind. So that continuous supply that UNOC does, yes, and that is why we are able to tell you that in March we are bringing 119 million liters. Next week I'm bringing so much. In June I'm bringing so much, because we pre-order, because we've overseen this. Another strategy is to diversify the routes. And I don't know how many times we need to say this. We actually have a diversified route. We have Mombasa, that is the more frequent one, and I think people know the Kenyan route better. But we also have Tanga through Mutukula. Actually, this weekend from Friday, most of the fuel we were getting was from the Mutukula route. So we have that diversification. We've also said we have the strategy of having reservoirs that I mentioned earlier. The one in Jinja, the Lake Victoria Logistics, the Nakasongola one, and the new one we are building. That is strategy. That is looking forward. Thinking of, let's build a reservoir of 320 liters. And yet the ones we have at the moment are 30, 70, you know. So that is someone who's forward looking. But also the constant question of fast oil. We are now eventually going to produce the technical commissioning on 31st of July, and then the rest will happen. And then when in 3-4 years, when our refiners are ready, that fuel that people say, can't it work now? Like Minister said, it's crude oil, so we still have to send it out. But once our refinery is ready, then we can also refine. That is strategy. The centralized supply, where I said UNOC is strategy, the centralized supply, that way we can control, we can watch the price, as opposed to competing sources. That can look like a short-term solution now, but what does it mean for the pricing? if we diversify. So it's something we need to think about. Active market monitoring that we are doing, that we said earlier, and people perhaps feel we are not doing enough, but me, I'm saying we're not working in front of the camera. We're actually going out to resolve these issues with the regulatory oversight, monitoring, like I gave you the example of Adjumani, and the next day the price dropped from 8,000 to 5 overnight because someone reported, gave us photographic evidence. So when people call and say it's 15,000 here, where in Serere is this? But we'll go and do a wild goose chase. Sometimes you don't find. Of course, if people have wind, we are coming. But you know, we rely on such information to also cross-check the regional and cross-border demand. So we've brought in the management, yes, that let us bring security and regulate what we were not regulating before because of the crisis we have in the border towns that we shared earlier. So we are saying, yes, you can fuel, but you can't take away bulk. You know, because we have the most favorable price in the region, you shouldn't deny our citizens. Of course, business people are not happy, but you see, this is stock we brought for our country, and we need to respect that. I've talked about the medium-term, long-term energy transition plans, the domestic oil productions, refinery, the biofuel blending. All these are strategies, and actually what the fuel blending is supposed to do is to reduce consumption eventually, so it gets cheaper. If I fill my tank today, like the car I drive, sometimes I go to work in Entebbe, sometimes, you know, I'm in Amber House, each week I might need to fill my tank. But if I buy blended fuel, which we actually already have the market, said is associated with Total. Total has been blending. There's that other one they call, I forget the name. There's the other fuel that they sell more expensively at the petrol station, but it's already blended fuel. But it's cleaner and it takes longer. I don't know why the name has disappeared. There's a name they use, but anyway, there's that other fuel that is already blended. It is cleaner, but it also covers you a longer distance. What would cover 1 kilometer will cover 3 kilometers. So as we blend, and already we have 2 facilities in Mutukula and actually Malaba, we've set up blending facilities there. So eventually it gets cheaper. Yeah, you might not feel it at the pump price, but you'll feel it. Oh, these days my fuel takes longer, and yet I'm covering the same distance. Those are some of the strategies. The Honorable Minister talked about the transition to e-mobility. One of the first charging stations, which was a pilot, is at Amber House, in front of Amber House. We test out these things. As a policy maker, we test out, we recommend, and we push for the policy. And now we see so many charging stations coming up. And you already said, you know, Ministry of Energy is working with other ministries to make sure that this works. So that is forward-looking plan. And there's so many contingency plans. So to claim that government is not strategic, it has no policies, how did all this happen even before the conflict? It means government is strategic, it looks ahead.
Thank you. Yes, Ambassador, you have something to comment?
Just wanted to pick it up from Dr. Patricia here, what she said, government being strategic. I think a crisis like this brings to light one key aspect which we should not allow to fall through the cracks. Strategic reserves, strategic national reserves. I think we need a conversation around that. This is not the first time we have gone through a fuel crisis, maybe not of this magnitude, but previously. To be very honest, I don't think all of us have done well in terms of building strategic national reserves, because times like this, one of the immediate government responses would be to release some strategic reserves. You hear Trump threatening, says if prices go out of range, I'm going to just go and release our strategic reserves on offshore, in Texas or where, and that will bring prices down. In Uganda, I think we should be honest enough to say that we have not done much to build those stocks. I don't know the level today, But my point here is to Honorable Minister and Dr. Patricia and perhaps my brother from UNOC, let's think strategic national reserves and build adequate stocks, because they say crises like this happen, they are cyclical. There will be another one which you may not be able to project now. But if we do not, I think the number I last saw was, is it 20 million in ginger, if at all?
30.
Maybe 30? Is it actually there?
Is it functional?
Is it functional, or there's zero stock? So anyway, that's not the issue. My issue is long-term planning to mitigate future sort of problems like this. Patricia here talked about Kampala storage terminal. That conversation has been around for quite some time, but we don't see traction. So it's good to have plans, but execution. So I think we need to be a little bit more serious and be able to implement some of these blueprints that we have for us to be secure, supply security going forward.
Energy security. I know there are two comments here before I come back to you, Stephen. Yes, Rashid.
Yeah, I think in terms of planning and strategic reserves, government has been innovative. On the one side, what you can do is to get money from the treasury and buy, say, 100 million liters of fuel and keep somewhere and say, don't touch it until we call on to it when there's a crisis. Crisis will happen once in 5 years, so there are lots of risks there. What government has done and what has been instructed to us as UNOC is it has facilitated a conversation in our agreement with our supply partner that the building of additional stockholding capacity is of national interest and had to be committed to. So that commitment is there in our agreement to the extent, as has been mentioned, that the ginger storage facility is being increased from 30 million to 40 million. Now someone would ask, only 40 million, what does it do? Besides that, what we're doing is to increase on the equipment so that there's operational efficiency. That 40 million liter facility can be used to turn around 80 million liters, because from a trading perspective, we'll be holding stocks in ginger, holding stocks in Mahati as indicated, and then holding stocks as well in the Kampala storage terminal. Now, whatever has come in here into the country, remember, has been imported by UNOC. So by default, it's government property. So it is reserves, not using funds from the treasury, but being innovative enough to say, can we just ensure we have stock holding in the country today, tomorrow, and for the future, when the refinery comes on board and we're able to receive the refinery product in the Kampala storage terminal. So I think for me, in terms of building of reserves, we are on a good traction. We're on a good traction to the extent that the challenges we faced with loadings in Western Kenya were mitigated by the trucks, as has been indicated, coming from Tanga, Dar es Salaam, and Mutwara, all the way down close to Malawi. Those are all the alternatives. So they help. This field which came in was supposed to be filling up the tanks in ginger, but because of the need, we release it into the market. So today when you come to ginger, on one day you'll find 8 million liters, on another day you'll find 2, but because there's always replenishment, on another day you'll find 20. So I don't want the public to have this perception that government has not done anything. We have been innovative, it is contractualized, and we believe that in the short term we're doing so well, but also in the medium term, because of the additional capacity we are building, the innovative approach is, instead of having strategic fuel reserves bought by money from the treasury, that money has been left for other other use, and we will have stock holding enough to cushion the country for a longer term.
Let me come to Ambassador Stephen. Ambassador, a conversation we were having when we were in the break, especially on the dollar versus the petrol there, it has been going up. That means also the purchasing power of a Ugandan also drops there. Read us into this situation there, but also what more can we do? Because since 1971, it's been the dollar with the petrol.
Yes, Timothy, there is a very strong correlation between the greenback, the dollar, and oil prices. They move basically in tandem. And in crisis times like this, whenever there is pressure on oil, the correlation even becomes much stronger. Now, what that does on highly energy import-dependent countries, it increases their import bill. And that means dollars. So you need more dollars to import the product. So that creates a demand in the domestic financial market. So you'll see a lot more demand, but supply remains what it is, and that imbalance creates a weak currency. That's why you have seen, since the crisis began, the Uganda shilling has been under pressure.
Yes.
It has, if you take the last 2 years, relatively stable. Uganda shilling was even trending as the strongest currency in Africa. But come February this year, we have seen it on the back foot. And that is not likely to stabilize soon. Of course, you know the implication of a weak currency. It feeds inflationary pressures. So we're going to see elevated inflationary pressures going forward. Tomorrow, it will be very interesting to see the numbers for the month from UBOS, but clearly inflation will go up. Then, of course, now we'll see a response from the central bank by trying to tighten. Tightening means higher interest rates. It has a fiscal implication. So this scenario that we're in is likely to derail stable macroeconomic indicators going forward. So that is another problem on its own going forward. So if you look forward, where is now our tenfold growth that we're talking about? It's off track. For how long? Nobody knows. Because nobody can tell you now that the crisis is going to end tomorrow.
Yes.
Nobody has visibility over that. So really, there are so many moving parts, and it's hard to figure out which direction. But clearly, we are in for a very rough time going forward.
You painted a very gloomy picture there. But what can an ordinary Ugandan do, especially with a circumstance that you can't really, you have no measure on how it stops or how it starts, but also it has effects that it affects you as an ordinary Ugandan, especially in the pump. Whether you're traveling to which part of the country, there's a price, because the transporters have said it will hike up between 5,000 and 10,000. 5,000 for 80 kilometers, 10,000 for more than 100, and further to 20,000. What should a Ugandan do in that sense?
I think that really the issue is to tighten our belts, manage with what you have, because there are so many exogenous factors, things that are not in your control. And I don't think even the authorities, both on the monetary policy side and fiscal side, have control of what is going on. So we are there in this space, but the issue is really to live within our means. If you look at players, government must live within their means, cut down expenditure because the taxes are not going to come if there is no economic activity. Now, of course, at a personal household level, again, it's austerity measures that one has to take into account. If you are going, if you eat 2 loaves of bread, maybe buy 1. So it really cuts across because it affects both businesses, households, and government.
You didn't mention something because we talked about the UAE withdrawing, something that I wanted you to comment about, because its withdrawal, its impact, but also what silver lining it produces, especially in the oil market there.
So for me, the issue is the shift in stability. OPEC is seen as it is a club of players where you know, different plays or different movements affect. Some players can say, today, I'm going to withhold my supply. I'm going to increase depending on the market dynamics. But if you get somebody completely pulling out, it's like a block is one element in the block has come out. It leaves a gap. Now, it's too early to read what is likely to happen, but it's clearly it has sent shivers across the Spain, and we are yet to see how others are going to respond to this.
Thank you. Dr. Holgembe, you mentioned imports, especially in our balance of trade as a country. What does this mean for the outlook of business? Government has been suggesting 6-7% economic growth, tenfold strategy, as Ambassador Stephen mentioned there. When you paint a picture come the next financial year, is it as rosy as we expect it to be, or how much has this crisis impacted it?
Okay, so first of all, I wanted to make a comment on the petrodollar system. I think Stephen touched on it, but I just wanted to mention that since around 1974, Saudi Arabia, which has been the largest oil producer, agreed with the US to price its oil exclusively in US dollars. So this has given the US dollar strength and a vantage point as a global reserve currency, because desires to have dollars. This has given the US great flexibility. Now what we've seen in this conflict is that for the first time, Iran was demanding that ships pay in yuan. So this is not just a war about oil, it's also a war on currency. So the US sees that its petrodollar system worked very well since 1974 is under attack. So that's why it's a fairly complex war to resolve, because it's not simply about geopolitical issues, it's also about economic interests. Now that also brings me to the decision by the UAE to withdraw from OPEC. It's a cartel formed in the 60s. UAE joined in 1967 as one of the leading members of that cartel. Of course, they help determine price through agreeing on quotas, supply quotas, and so on and so forth. So UAE would like to produce more, because now that there's global demand and the price is high, they want to be able to benefit from that now, because they are not sure that in the next so many years the prices will remain that high. So they feel that this cartel is unnecessarily restricting them. Also, they are having this geopolitical disagreement with Saudi Arabia, and they think Saudi Arabia has excessive influence over the cartel. So they want that freedom. And the US has been encouraging UAE to leave. So, mind you, the UAE is not a member of this cartel. So at the moment, it's actually making a lot of money because it can ramp up production as it wishes. So UAE is looking to the US and saying, why not? But for now, it doesn't make much difference, because UAE, even if it wants to export, the strait is closed. But long term, maybe if they ramp up production, it might help stabilize the global price of crude faster. Now, in terms of our macroeconomics, there are many issues that are likely to be of concern. One, the supply chain disruptions I talked about means that the cost of doing business for businesses will go up. Inevitably, some businesses will choose not to proceed doing what they do, which means government will collect less tax. The inflation will create headache for government. As I mentioned, the central bank will try to arrest it, but it will be in vain, because this is really imported inflation. So central bank itself will be in a catch-24. Also, when you have in such periods, we have reduced foreign direct investment coming into the country. We have reduced remittances. You know, we have a huge number of our people in the Middle East. So considering that the war is there, many of them are not sending as much as they would send. So that creates problems for us. We cannot export as much because of the cost of exports and disruptions and so on. Portfolio investors will choose to retreat back into the safety of the US dollar. So that's why you see that to a certain extent the US dollar is strengthening, because they are like, you know, we can't keep our money in Africa or in other regions during such times. So it creates all kinds of issues for the economy. So that undermines some of the assumptions that were made when we are talking about the tenfold growth. So what I would say is that, in fact, if I were in the finance ministry, before I would rush to have the budget passed, I would make certain reviews, because the circumstances have changed. You see, if I'm still a minister and I'm organizing a wedding tomorrow, and then tomorrow I'm not, I must call back the budget and say, we should reduce the number of guests. I'd intended to invite 1,000, I'll have 100. So a review of the budget would be in order, not just for this year, but also we might want to look at the medium-term expenditure framework, so that we see what is achievable given the circumstances in which we operate now. It's not gloom, because Uganda has tended to weather these kinds of crises quite well, as you see with the petroleum supply. Countries like Kenya, which are much bigger, you see they have been fidgeting a bit. So I think we hope that Uganda will manage this situation, but it's going to be a difficult one.
Thank you. Finally, Rashid, I know you're not a politician, you're a technocrat, but how do you restore or raise confidence in the public? Because you are really the supplier here. How do you restore confidence? You've given us good figures, you've really given us the process for us to understand. But the public out there is thinking about the pump and what is going into their car, their borders, or their livelihood of a taxi. How would you give them confidence that their livelihood is not about to be put between a rock and a hard place?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. But they say the best lessons come from history. If you remember the story of Joseph and Egypt and the harvests, when
7 years of plenty.
7 years of plenty and then 7 years of challenges. I think we're in those 7 years of plenty because people are coming to us. So ideally what it means that as Ugandans, we should follow the guidance given. What UNOC will continue doing with the support of Vitol is to bring in the fuel. Should we consume everything that comes in? That's the question. Should we consume everything that comes in? So probably, as has been submitted, if we cut down on our consumption from the 8 million liters a day to maybe 6, it means that we are building our stock holding in the terminal in Jinja, in Mahati, just in case the war continues. So at least we have some stock in the country. But if we continue to just sell to the neighbors. The good thing, by the way, is that there are some vessels that have come through in our neighborhood, Kenya, 3 vessels this week, and we believe that that is going to reduce on the pressure on our stocks. The only maybe flickering will be because of the price issue, but in terms of stocking, Kenya is going to be well stocked. So, and Kenya supplies as well our neighbors. So in terms of stocking of the product, the region is going to be well. But should we consume everything? Because like I've indicated, what UNOC, with the support of, with the guidance of government and with the support of Vitol, what we can do has a limitation. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't cross that red line. If we manage our consumption now, it means that all this fuel we've talked about, the 200 million liters of diesel, the 163 of petrol, once it comes in, we're not consuming everything and probably we're keeping some, so that at least if the war continues, we have some stocks in country. But the most important thing is that we'll have the fuel. The prices may change, but it's always good that you have the fuel as and when, and if it's a must that you should move, you're able to move. But at least you have the fuel, as opposed to not being able to have stocks in country. So that's our appeal to fellow Ugandans.
Could make a very good politician one day. But let's read the comments that have come through. Today in Tororo, the price was between 6,500 and 7,000, while in Entebbe it was about 5,500. This is Julius there. And he also talks about the blended one, that is V-Power. Okay. I do not see any reason of keep bringing some ministers who keep telling us the same thing about fuel over and over. We left that earlier. The fuel, we have left it for them. Okay. Good evening. Thank you, Timothy, for the show. This is Musa from Katakwi. The problem is also with the people who want to fuel, the people that want to fueling the price just for personal gain, because some fuel stations are still selling fair price. How come we want to force the problem for our local people down in the village because of the business people to be able to lead to commotion? Okay. Thank you. Some clarity on the projections of the price of cooking oil, price on cooking gas. I don't know if Dr. Patricia will comment about that. Probably this is not going to go as much as people anticipated. Vessels can be escorted and maybe even fueled in still coming through. But now this is news. Tomorrow, when another world news comes up that will scare us even more. The main concern is our CPI. It has been going up by 3% for the last month since 2009, straining the consumer purchase power. Another issue is the commercial banks that are lending rates and the statistics between 18 and 22%. The strain on jobs in the private sector. This is Peter Musoke. Of course, Americans are going to do their best to resolve this matter. Okay. Lastly but not least, this is Isma, an aspiring member of parliament for Yala, says, this is my comment. Why doesn't the government wait for the crisis before they plan? Yet we have a full ministry to work and plan for such incidences like money and ever allocating. The government should come up with a sensible reason with such reasoning and mediation for measures to help with the business fraternity, most likely to face the harsh conditions of this. Thank you for the show. There was one that came in from Maracha that I would like to address here. A lady sends and says, in Maracha, the prices have gone up. And they're wondering why the prices in West Nile have been able to go up there. So I'll give you parting shots. I'll start with Rashid here, Dr. Walgembe, Dr. Patricia, Ambassador Stephen, and finally the Honorable Minister. Your parting shots.
Yeah, thank you, viewers, and thank you for this opportunity. I think we restate our commitment to deliver on the fuel supply. We want to assure Ugandans that the figures that are being submitted by the ministry on a regular basis are based on facts. These are confirmed vessel deliveries, confirmed storages in our terminals,
yes,
in Mombasa, in Dar es Salaam, in Mutwara, confirmed storage in the country. And as far as supply is concerned, we have a commitment with the support of our supply partner that fuel will continue flowing into the country. Just like I mentioned earlier, maybe it's time, because we don't know how long this war will go.
Yes.
It's time to cut down on consuming what we bring in so that we can build our stock holding in the country.
In this market. So this brings us to, it's an appeal to look again at our Competition Act, which is very weak, to give it some teeth so that we can protect the consumer in terms of pricing, whether for fuel or other products. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Patricia?
Thank you. Quickly, the issues of West Nile, those are border towns, so they face the cross-border challenges of demand from our neighbors. That is why the shortage there is worse than in other parts. The issue of the LPG, which we commonly call gas, the liquefied petroleum gas, in Uganda, the packaging is in different kilograms. There's 3 kilograms, 6, 12, but those are between 95 and 110,000, and those still remain the same. But for me, my concluding words is that fuel supply remains steady, and the public needs to appreciate that, as we've explained. The prices, however, are dependent on the global dynamics, but we continue to regulate and monitor so that everything remains reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador?
Yeah, my parting shot really is to call for collaborative effort. I think government must work closely with the market. Must be collaborative. Government is on the regulation side, but you must properly regulate with flexibility. Yes. Allow for flexibility in order to manage this crisis. I think let's not look at ourselves as regulators and market players. We are not in competition. We must harmonize and work together and push ahead in order to get out of this crisis together. So for me, it is collaborative, flexibility, honest and transparent communication.
Thank you. Lastly, the Honorable Minister.
Yeah, one thing I would like to assure our viewers and all Ugandans is that government will work tirelessly hard to ensure we have constant supply of fuel. And government is putting in place measures to increase the storage capacity. Because I think we have already signed an agreement with to put up a bigger storage. So, and this issue of thinking we're operating in a crisis, this is not our crisis. It is a global crisis. So this time it's not Uganda's what? Crisis. This is a global crisis, and therefore we should look at it that way. And just as I said, there are some countries which are in even bigger crisis. Even our neighbor here, there are some things we can't talk on TV here. But you should also know we have really strategically positioned ourselves. I hope people now know that we have close to 20% shares in the Kenya pipeline. So whatever decision is taken, this time we are there. Otherwise, if we are not having those shares, I think recently we would have got some crisis of some sort. So we are positioning ourselves to ensure we are really secured. And I've taken Ambassador's advice seriously. This issue of communication gap, to bridge it, and then the collaborative efforts. And I would like to assure you, Ambassador, that we shall be as flexible as possible. Because during times of crisis, you don't need to be rigid. You must be as flexible as possible. It is something that we need to handle as Ugandans, and therefore, as government, we are going to be as flexible as possible. We don't just come to these talk shows to argue for argument's sake. We also come to these talk shows to get feedback. And therefore, your feedback, your suggestion is well taken care of. since we have Minister of Energy and Enoch here, and myself representing the executive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady, for coming through and being able to grace us and discuss such a patent issue. For the production team for making today possible, for you who has watched today and sent a message, thank you very much.
I would like to invite people to come for the swearing-in ceremony on
Honorable Minister, you're going to be again next week, so...
Tuja kulaira, so the kulaira will be there.
I also want to thank the production team for making today possible. You have been the most important person watching this show up to this hour. We'll end it with this quote: "Power does not panic unless it knows it's losing control." Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari heritage advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, every story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of the roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
It's going to be a tall project. That answers somebody's question.
The front bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice, and commerce.
When you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers, you bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge, these are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport.
If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
They look there, Navy. So they had 159 ships. Every ship is right now underwater. Now, that's, of course, a big statement coming from the American president saying that Ukraine has been defeated militarily. But given the context